Let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David,
people going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
Hi, David Glass here, host of the HourGLASS Podcast, where family law and psychology intersect. Parental alienation. That's the topic for our launch of Season 8. For those of you unfamiliar with parental alienation, it's when one parent tries, and often does, turn the child or children against the other parent. Some tactics of the alienating parent are bold and obvious, like trying to outgift the other parent or intentionally moving away to cut off easy access. Other of their techniques are more subtle, like making a disgruntled noise or rolling their eyes at the mention of what the other parent said to the child. Most of the efforts to have the child turn against the parent hurt everyone, but especially the child. He or she is often made to feel they must choose sides between the two, and it's a lose-lose situation. The damage and estrangement can last a lifetime if one parent is left out of a child's life, even after the child becomes an adult. And we're going to hear firsthand how parental alienation has affected a dad whose 3 children were taken away from him by his ex-wife. He'd been married for 9 years, and all 3 children were toddlers at the time of the divorce. Today, the children are 26, 28, and 29 years old. After the breakup, this dad fought valiantly for more than 25 years, trying to maintain his relationship with his children. And he's still fighting. He spent more than $250,000 in the California court system and even took his case all the way to the California Supreme Court. Where is he with all this today? I'm going to let him tell you. His name is Victor Dohleman, and he heads a small Southern California manufacturing company. Victor, we're so happy you could join us today and tell us about your really rough, tragic, harrowing story of your situation with your divorce and your 3 kids. But I'm pretty sure that sharing your story will help our viewers, some of whom are going through this and thinking that they're going through it alone and no one else has gone through it. So if we could just get started with give our viewers an idea of how long you were married and what marriage was like before you had kids and before the separation happened.
I had gone away to college and met my future bride in class in Northern California, and we dated for a few years and lived together, and obviously we got married. We were married for quite some time, several years, 9.5 altogether. We started having children relatively quickly. We were go-getters, both of us. We were able to get a nice home pretty quickly. We had children immediately, and they were fairly right together. So you're a 1-year-old. At any given point, I had a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Right.
They were very closely spaced. And sometimes one was a little older, but essentially a year apart or so. And I worked for a large international company, and I was traveling quite a bit. I was traveling salesman. I was, all over North America, Canada. And my wife, who also worked, who insisted on working, at one point I told her she didn't need to, but we compensated with a nanny and house care and various things. I think it was a little hard on her, but seemed like everything was okay. We seemed to get along well until we didn't. I started to suspect some things, but I didn't know what it was. And all of a sudden, I come home one day and they're not there, completely gone. And excuse me, this is a difficult story. Even now, 25 years later, I'll have to take a drink of water. It raises my blood pressure and it raises my anxiety level just telling the story.
Sure.
But it is important I've talked to a lot of people younger than me that were gone through things after I did all of this. And I think my story is probably one of the most remarkable, unfortunately, in the tragedy of it. But the important message is I did come out of it with a lot. I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's. And But what happens along the way is an incredible story.
Right. So what at the very beginning, she disappears with your 3 kids.
Yes.
And what kind of behaviors was she engaging in to turn your kids against you? What were the the biggest things and also some of the subtle things she was doing?
Well, initially, she wasn't doing anything in front of the kids. They were quite small. What she did was, I think that she wanted out of the relationship, but instead of coming to me and saying, "Look, I want a divorce. You're a lousy husband. This isn't working out." Whatever. It was rather cowardly. She just ran off, and I don't know if she ran off because of another man. I don't know if she had a mental break. It was postpartum. I still don't know. I've never spoke to her since then. She's avoided.
Right.
This is like a really bizarre. It's hard to tell. But the children, once they took off, the day they left, it was early February 2000. I came home early. We had been going to counseling a little bit in order to, I think it was marriage counseling. And so we were trying to work things out, and she was complaining I was gone all the time. So I was coming home earlier. And, so that day I came home early to make dinner, and nothing. They don't come home. So I started to get worried. I call the parents, I call friends, I call the babysitter. Nothing. Finally, I called the police. And the police spent some time with me, and the policeman, started digging, and he found out that she had basically went to a battered women's shelter. And I was astonished. And he called the battered women's shelter, and he looked at me and said, you don't have any criminal record. I've never been to this house. Everything seems in order here. He says, I think you're being set up. I'm not one to comment, but protect yourself, which I heard that word several times after. I didn't want to believe any of that.
Yeah.
So that's where it began. And fighting from that point to get access to the kids or any kind of visitation that was reasonable. It's been a battle ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been a divorce lawyer for 30 years. And before that, I was a clinical psychologist. And so I get a lot of, unfortunately, these sorts of cases where one parent is alienating the kids against the other. One parent is grabbing the kids and claiming the other parent is engaging in domestic violence. And it's always that first step. When it's untrue, when it's completely made up, it puts the other parent in a hole, and you've got to try and dig out of the hole before you even get back to level ground and can start trying to see your kids. It really puts you behind.
The accusations and it was pre-planned, I know for a fact.
Yeah.
And the story was so preposterous. I laughed when I read the first, separation, what they were saying. Restraining order. I'll list everything if you like, but it was basically absurd.
Yeah.
And so by the time we get to court, which we end up not being in court in Southern California, unfortunately, she had taken the kids to Northern California where she was from and her parents were there.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe we could still reconcile. So I was trying to maybe appease her and, okay, you want to be near your folks, you want to, I was trying to solve the problem. I didn't think the divorce was serious. Taking it out of the jurisdiction, and this is one piece of advice, taking it out of the jurisdiction was something I should have never done.
Right.
But I did it because I was trying to reconcile.
Sure.
And so I ended up having to go to Northern California, which is 480 miles away.
Right.
The time I had to negotiate. And I didn't get to see the kids for 4 months after that. And at that point, it was supervised. And it was very expensive and painful and just court cases. And it was terrible. I thought it was a very devious and evil.
Yeah.
I didn't want to believe it. I was in a disbelief. I kept thinking, there's got to be a solution. I'm the same person you see now then.
Yeah.
Pragmatic, problem solver. The parents were basically negotiating for her and saying, if you do this, maybe she'll talk to you in a couple weeks, and she just needs time. And but it was a mirage. It was basically lies, and they were plotting. I think she ran off with somebody else or had a mental break. I don't know. It was postpartum. Unfortunately, in my case, I don't have a clear diagnosis of why. And sometimes people won't, in my case, no, because it's been blackout, and so, it does bring a lot of anxiety, just even now, but we've moved forward. But parental alienation is real. At the time, PAS, when I brought the word parental alienation syndrome up, the attorneys that I were dealing with were like, "What's that?" They didn't know the term, and I had to explain to them. I said, "This is erasure. This is alienation." You're like, "Oh, okay." They didn't know that it was so, possible, I guess.
Sure. My first case that I litigated where parental alienation was even involved, the literature was brand new. This Richard Gardner had come out with a theory. There weren't even too many psychologists who understood it, let alone judges or attorneys. And so it was very hard to convince people that a soon-to-be ex-spouse could be this devious, this planning. People say this
you
just
can't
doesn't
believe
happen.
Yeah, you somebody you've known for 10 years. We had fun. I loved my wife. I loved my children. Was I a perfect husband? Absolutely not. Nobody can be. Were there mistakes? But I was trying. What bothered me so much was I kept going to the counseling meeting, the husband and wife counseling.
Yeah.
And I managed to keep going to any kind of counseling, but even when she wasn't there, so I was trying. So if there was another man involved, I don't know, probably, because she did get pregnant very quickly, married very quickly. So, I guess I was a bit of a stooge, and the advice to people is protect yourself. It's very hard because emotionally you want to believe you're either very angry and you do something stupid, you're violent or you threaten or whatever you might do, or you roll over like I did. I was like, okay, I'll give her everything there is. I just want to reconcile. I want my children back. I don't care about the house. I don't care about the money. And that's what I did. I took a position of, I told the attorneys, she can have the house, she can have the cars, the 401k. I'm going to close the business. I will move to Northern California. I will do what it is.
Yeah.
She said, but all of that was water under the bridge, unfortunately for me. Yeah. And so and so what ends up happening is just, is horrible. It's just, there's no way to explain it.
Yeah.
So I fought valiantly in court. And the stuff that people need to be aware of is, there was accusations and a litany of them, and I disproved them categorically. From being crazy, I had a full-blown 730, and that psychologist said, "You are the most sane, kind person we've ever met. There is nothing here to report negative." Oh, well, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Then it was your father is a gangster and you're in the what are you talking about? We don't. This is, my folks are normal people. It was just unfortunately those attorneys they knew where the money was because this is I don't want to talk bad about attorneys per se, but this particular situation. The attorneys knew that the folks had a lot of money. So when there's a lot of fuel, there's a lot of fire.
Right.
So the high conflict divorce, they knew the folks they had hit oil and gas on their land, just like Beverly Hillbillies, which you can imagine. And those same attorneys knew about all that. So I was the bad guy from LA, and they were going to, milk me for everything. I knew this, and so I was basically at a disadvantage, and it took years to get anywhere, but I fought valiantly, and I still do.
Let me ask you, and it's a tough question. So you start to see the kids; they're still little. You're seeing them with a supervisor, which is a highly artificial situation. Someone's watching every move.
Yes,
and doesn't let the kids out of their sight. How soon did the kids start acting differently to you? Because I could see after not seeing your dad for 4 months, if, for example, your mom is saying, Dad's not even interested in you. If he were interested, he would be up here, but he's not looking for you. So, and that's a common sort of thing that happens in these cases. So how were the kids acting differently when you first started trying to see them with a supervisor?
Well, in the very beginning, they were little. So my oldest was 4, and she knew. She said, said things like, "Daddy, I told Mommy you love her." She was close to me. They would come. They were just little. What ends up happening is I'm cut off pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because all I want to talk about is reconciliation or getting through this divorce, and these visitations with the kids are really spread out. They're 500 miles away. I've got to get an airplane, a rental car, a hotel. They don't show up sometimes. Right. So, and I'm heartbroken. I've been waiting months to see my kids. And I don't know if it was a strategy or just callousness, but it was terrible. The kids were very little. So, I kind of compartmentalized them and said, okay, I just have to work on it. They'll get older. I'll be there for them. That day never came. I didn't see my children after the last supervised visitation until they were 18.
Wow.
Yes. Didn't know where they were. I knew that they were in Northern California, but I didn't know, I knew I could obviously figure out where they were with the private detective. I could spend all this time, but I knew that they were near the parents and they were safe, and I knew where they went to school. It was a small town with a lot of people that knew each other. And so, the parents were well-to-do. Even the prosecutor said, "We've never seen anything like this. Your things are not going your way. Be careful." In Orange County, they had a child abduction unit, and they had made phone calls on my behalf, and they said, "We talked to them. They're out to get you. You're behind the 8 ball." They kept warning me, and I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So it ends up just going to court, and it doesn't go well, and everything's just asinine, everything.
Do you have any idea how many times you had to go to court in this case until finally the court process was over because your kids were over 18?
So we had to read many hearings, obviously many. And it was always postponed or continued, or if you do this and do that, they were doing everything to wear me down. And I was financially, I lost my home. I closed my business because I was mentally incapable of working.
Sure.
I was focused 100% on this situation. Slowly but surely, after my first initial attorneys, the money wore out, so to speak. Yeah. Several tens of thousands of dollars. They tried valiantly. They couldn't get anywhere with this. It was always something. The judge was well connected to my in-laws, and it was like nothing would go. They just no cooperation, and I was driving back and forth. Meantime, I'm going broke. And, they had just lots of things. I'm going through the loss of my wife. So I couldn't figure out why she didn't like me anymore. That was, right. After about 6 months, I was like, okay, fine. She's causing all this. I don't want anything to do with her. But initially, I didn't know. To this day, I've never spoken to her. The kids, then I began to focus on the kids. The mediator was not on my side, and they just made it difficult. And so finally, when I realized that they just weren't going to let me see the kids, and I was virtually indigent, I decided to move to my aunt's house for a few weeks to kind of get my head together. This was in Florida. I'm staying there for a while. I get served with a notice that they're terminating my parental rights.
Right.
And I'm astonished. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay. So now I decide, obviously this is very serious. I go back to California. We go back to court. This time, different attorney, different jurisdiction. They moved it to another adjacent county.
Yeah.
And, taking someone's parental rights away is a major thing. And this should be a trial that should last days, if not weeks, with witnesses and so forth. I go there with no attorney other than a court-appointed attorney. And the attorney that was representing my former wife was obviously one of the top in the county. He knew the judge very well. Yeah. The proceedings lasted less than a half a day. The decision was made with no witnesses. It was a sham, basically. I mean, let's call it what it is. And the public defender I had apologized. He said, look, the guy is well known. He's the best in the whole county. He goes, I was thrown this case. I've never done this. Yeah. He said, I will file an appeal for you. That's best I can do.
So the attorney was going to take an appeal for you. You've lost your parental rights. In addition,
right. So I lose my parental rights. I'm devastated, and I basically, there's no more moves to make. So I filed the appeal, and filing an appeal in the state of California with the state Supreme Court is a daunting task and very expensive, as you should know. Yeah. The attorney that represented one of the best, I couldn't afford the best, but I found somebody that was willing to do it during her pregnancy. She was very empathetic, and when she heard this story, she took my case and prepared it while she was going through her, pregnancy. Yeah. The situation took a long time to appeal. Appeal is not like a couple of months. This is 2 years. In the appeal, we, obviously went after all the things that were unjust. The court, unfortunately, ruled just on the technicality of the fact that it was in the wrong jurisdiction. So what that meant was we went back to the same courthouse, to the same judge, to the same people. Now they're all angry at me. Right. And I've got to get a new attorney and more money. And we went at it again. This time, I'm obviously angry and more animated. And, I didn't do anything. In this whole time, I've never done anything demonstrable or criminal. But I'm, in court, and I'm having a hard time. And, I'm saying, you've taken my kids away. What plan? I'm fighting. You're telling me I abandoned my children. Right. I'm here looking for my kids. What planet are you folks on? Yeah. Anyways, we go through the motions. The attorney who was the former mayor of Davis, California, was a sweetheart guy. I had given him his initial fee, and when that ran out, I knew that I had been used to running out of money. So he had said, "We're going to keep going," and he went way more than than he should have, but he did it because he felt bad for me. And we lost that. And so it was very difficult. During that time, years are going by. I had all of this for me it causes a lot of adrenaline for me. It gets me upset. So it was affecting me physically. And I ended up having heart attacks. So I'm 60 years old now. At the time, I was in my early 30s. My first heart attack at 37. God. And my family had felt sorry for me and said, look, let's go back to California and fight again. And we had another judge, and this particular judge had said, this guy needs to see his kids. Actually, I'm telling this a little bit out of order because this had happened prior to the appeal. Yeah. I had gone back to court yet again. This particular judge who had said, this man needs to see his kids. This is ridiculous. they recused that judge because the court rules allow you to kick out one judge one time.
Right.
Yeah, I think you might be familiar with those rules. And we were back to square one, like that. It was over. I thought I was going to see my kids. I scraped up $3,000 for attorney's fees. And now, they're not going to let me see the kids. And that's when they filed the parental, taking away my parental rights.
Termination of parental rights.
Yeah, right.
And so your case follows. There's almost a playbook.
It's a playbook. Yeah.
It's the first step is to get the kids away from the other parents. That's what she did. Then the second step is to delay so that parent can't see the kids. The next step is to claim abuse, so that you have to go through an abuse hearing, which could take up to 6 months, where you're not allowed to see the kids. And in somewhere in there, there's also the step of trying to get the jurisdiction to the new place, because they want to engage in a poisoning of the well. They want all the neighbors, the mayor, the baker, the garbage collector. They want everyone to know, in their terms, what a horrible person the other parent is, so that it's almost impossible to get a fair trial. And so each of these things happened to you as you went along.
It was systematic. I realized this. I knew what I was dealing with. I think that's kind of what kept me together. I internalized the pain. It wasn't, and I'll tell people my advice, holidays and things where you have painful, where you have to deal with these parts of your life. Mm-hmm. You deal with them the way you can. I had chose my way, but, fighting this took a lot out of me, took physically, I ended up having 4 heart attacks.
Yeah.
And ultimately having to have a heart transplant and many procedures in between all those years, over a 20-year span. And yes, some of that obviously is due to physiological reasons, or, they may have happened, but I can tell you that this amount of stress on anybody is going to do some sort of damage. And I'm convinced that this is what happened to me, but I did survive.
Right.
And I have survived brilliantly.
How have you managed all this emotional trauma over the years? What have you done? Is it therapy? Is it finding groups? Is it having a couple of close friends? Like, what can you do to try and handle this?
I kept a journal, because the word podcast wasn't in the lexicon back then. Even some of the social media things didn't exist. And I thought, God, someday, my kids are going to want to hear this story. Are they going to care? Will they care? Hopefully somebody cares. Yeah. Today is a good day to get some of this out to the public. But I kept a journal, a day by day. So I can tell you what I did in 2021 or 2004 on February 3rd, when I went to co-parenting classes. I kept doing everything I could do to the max to try to get those kids back, or to prove to them at some point, hey, if they were judge, jury, they could look at this set of records and say, my dad loved me. He did this. He went the mile. And this was one-sided. Because, they're being fed. Who knows what they're being fed? They're being alienated. And anyone that can alienate at this level is truly, in my opinion, narcissistic to the core.
Yeah.
A lot of divorces, folks go, hey, we don't get along, but, as your kids, you get them every other week, whatever the rules are.
Right.
Mine is total wipeout, blackout, kill them, knock them dead, accuse them of everything under the sun, which I peeled off systematically, was drugs or something. All perfect drug tests on my own volition. My attorneys were advising me, like, look, these are the types of things they're going to go after you for. So I was proactive, and that's good advice. If they say anything, prove them wrong before they have a chance to say there's a smoking gun. And I did that, but it was in vain, unfortunately. The kids were ultimately taken out of state, and I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Until about 2013. So we're talking more than a decade.
Yeah.
I had let go of the parental alienation case had gone to Supreme Court. We'd retried it. I had yet more heart attacks, more pain. My current wife, who saved my life, you know, helped me through all this. She said, "You're just going to have to let it go until they're 18. This is going your way. It's going to kill you." And she was right. And I had an epiphany that day, and I walked out of court and I said, "Okay, I'm done. I've gone the mile." And I'm not saying everyone should go as far as I did, but for me, that's what I had to do. To prove to myself, because in the end, you got to live with yourself. If your kids are permanently alienated from you, or they're partially alienated, if you've done things in your opinion as extreme as what I have done, then you know in your heart, you know for certain that you've done it, and that you're not the bad guy. There's forces you cannot control. So you got to take care of yourself. And I lived a good life, and I had I still have the same friends since I was a little kid. All the friends stayed with me. She alienated all the friends, all the family. You know, my mother and father passed away. They never got to see the great grandkids. They never saw my children get raised. For what? Because of alienation. It's something worse. It's almost as bad as losing somebody in death, because you know they're still alive. But you can't do anything about it. When somebody dies, you accept that it's over and you can try to heal. This is a little more difficult, and you need help of professionals. You really.
What's the status of your relationship with any of your three kids at this as of today?
So I didn't know where they were. I mean, and my secretary at the time had found them on a little thing called MySpace, and they were very little. And my oldest daughter was starting to become 18, and my family figured out how to get a hold of her. So my mother and my secretary and my girlfriend and my friends, everyone started messaging her, and they tried to get a hold of her. And she was reluctant, but eventually I was able to get a meeting with her right when she turned 18. And the first meeting is very suspicious. Weird questions like, "Are you in the mob?" I'm like, "Where did you hear this?" I mean, very naive and very bizarre questions. So he tells me that there was some very, in my opinion, brainwashing going on. I would say. And so, I mean, it is what it is. But slowly, my oldest daughter started to realize who I was. And so we made contact when she was 18. She's now 29. Shortly thereafter, my youngest, she reached out when she was about 17 and a half, and she was very vivacious and bubbly, very happy. I think she wasn't affected as much because she was little. She didn't realize until later. I think the first two were traumatized because they had memory. The youngest was like, "Hey, I want to come to California. You seem great. When can I come?" And she did. The minute she turned 18, she moved to California. It was very joyous. She moved in. She went to college here. We still have a wonderful relationship. She's now a mother herself and grandkids. And it's been fine. The one bad part is my son, who's a spitting image of me, is completely doesn't want to talk, doesn't want to come to the phone, refuses to do anything. So, my advice to parents who are in that situation with a child is that you cannot beg them to be, because you are a person, you're a human being, you're just as valuable as they are on this planet. And if they choose, they know what they're doing. They know that they're blowing you off. They know. And if they choose to do that, you cannot be a doormat. You have to say, "Look, they want to come, they want to come." As painful as that is, as much as you want to try, it's not, I don't think, in my opinion, it's advisable until they decide. I'm 60. We'll see how long it takes for him. But, the girls are lovely, and there isn't a total loss. There's a lot of things that, your whole life doesn't revolve sometimes just around your children. I have a wide frame of reference of people and I know I'm loved a lot. I don't base my love based on just this incident or So, yeah, it's bittersweet. That's a little difficult, but it could change, but I'm not gonna beg. I know that's the key. You got to believe in yourself that you
Sure.
didn't do it. You didn't do anything wrong. Hey, take responsibility for what you have done, maybe, but if it's this extreme or you're in similar situation, stand up for yourself. Stand up for yourself.
Sure. And that's, I mean, again, over the 30 years I've been practicing, for the kids who got away and ended up being alienated and had little contact with the parent who was left behind, the advice has always been wait till they're adults, reach out to them, show them that you're still interested, but they've got to make the decision to come back to you and find you where you are and who you are. And hopefully they take that step to make that discovery of who you really are, as opposed to the fables and the stories and the lies that were told about you.
I agree. The thing about PAS is that, and what I've discovered later now, is I thought that these kids would come running back and they would be, I could tell them the story, the truth. Because the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
If people could skew things, you can have two sides, but really the facts are the facts. And the fact is that they were alienated, and there is no escaping that. If you look at the record, so if the kids decide not to take the reality and they believe whatever they want to believe, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I just worry that they don't repeat it with their children.
Right.
That's the lesson. Or that they don't turn to alcohol or abusing themselves or bad temper, whatever malady they may have, because of subconsciously they have some problem because of this, because it's not natural. I grew up with loving parents. I never heard of anything like this. I didn't expect this, but you're dealt things like this in life. You got to deal with it. I literally had a broken heart. Luckily science has been able to replace it.
Yeah.
But you can make it. I don't know what else to add. It's something that needs better attention. The courts don't look at it carefully enough.
Right. Do you have, can you wrap things up with three things you should do if you find early on that you're the victim of parental alienation?
It's hard because you depends on your circumstances. So there's different advice for where you're at. I would say don't roll over. Don't do what I did in the sense of thinking, if you just give in or just try harder or do this and that, you need to immediately tack it head on.
Yeah.
It's not in a vicious way, but in a business-like way. And you've got to listen to your attorney. You've got to do it's counterintuitive sometimes. You think, my God, this is not, because the courts, if you raise your voice, you move suddenly, the little cues that judges sometimes, they think, he's aggressive, he's dangerous, you don't people don't understand what's going on in your head. You don't realize crazy making behavior is what I call it. Somebody does all this to you and then they go, well, see, look how irrationally, well, you just stole my kids, for Christ's sake. What do you expect me to do? The advice is hard to follow in that respect. Don't let yourself be abused. If the kids don't want to respond, they don't want to respond. If they're alienated, do everything you can to unalienate them. Don't let it go out of jurisdiction. Don't let them get too far away.
Yeah.
You got to move fast. Like I said, this was a long time ago, and we didn't see this coming. But now with social media, with high-speed communications, the internet, cell phones, everything, the information's out there. I think a 30-year-old man or woman who could be going through this with children, they need to figure it out quick so they don't get railroaded, like I did,
Yeah, the figuring it out quick, finding an attorney who understands what's going on. The Latin term is a writ ne exeat, which is if someone leaves the jurisdiction, and that's where the kids lived for the 6 months before, you got to get into court on an emergency and have them all ordered back. And that's what
I should have done. I rolled over on that. That was a big mistake, because I could have stayed in Orange County, and being in Orange County, I think it was more fair area. This was in a rural area and they were all in coots. corruption's corruption. Let's call it what it is. And I was behind the 8 ball, and it was far, and I thought that, well, I just moved back there where we're from. She needed her mother. I had all these rationalities. No, don't do that. Stay where you are. Keep the kids close. Don't let any advantage. It has to be that way, even if you reconcile, at some point, or you have a amicable divorce at some point. Don't get in the situation I had gotten into, because you can see what happened. It's dangerous. There's other parts to life. There's good people out there. Know that you're a good person. Good people will know. I've got a lot of empathy from people. A lot of people, the one thing initially was like, well, what did you do?
Sure.
Always that suspicion. Well, they wouldn't have done all this if, you were, half of this, they said. No, that's not true. Alienation's about that. Modern term, gaslighting, alienation, whatever, lying.
Yeah.
You create a monster and everyone believes it. Oh, well, he must be. Well, no, it's not true. And you, unfortunately, in family law court, you have to prove all it. You're not presumed innocent, right, unfortunately. And that is the advice. You really got to be proactive, even though you're emotional. And let this be a lesson. But you'll survive. I'm worried about people that do get suicidal and, or they slowly tear themselves apart with however. Don't do that, because you will live another day. Your kids will come along, whether it's later or sooner than later. And you got to be there for them. You got to be alive. And I'm a testament to that.
Well, Victor, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, for the courage you've shown in not just sharing your story, but going through 25 years, going to the ultimate lengths that you could to try and prevent this. And then really in the end, realizing that it was a waiting game, and you had to be who you were. You found yourself an amazing support system with a girlfriend who became a wife, your existing friends, your family, and then you took care of yourself. So really, in the end, it's a success story after a very tragic beginning.
Yes. You really have to take care. I went, despite all the heart problems, I fought to stay alive.
Yeah.
For my kids and for justice. I was basically taken advantage of, and I didn't know any better. It wasn't the resources. There is now.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt like this. You damn near almost killed me, but it didn't. And, the lesson is keep going and work hard at it, because you're going to need to, for the sake of yourself and your children.
That's the important lesson here. Thanks for wrapping it up for us. We're going to share a bunch of resources at the end of this podcast where people can get expert testimony from psychologists and the best attorneys in their counties, those sorts of things. So thank you again.
Yes. Yeah, it was very nice talking to you. I appreciate the time. I certainly do.
Hey, viewers, don't log out just yet. We're going to post a few links of organizations and communities where you can get help. One last note, if you find yourself bad-mouthing or putting down your ex in front of the kids, stop. Go to therapy, vent there. What you need to remember is that when you have kids together, no matter what you think of your ex-spouse, you should try, if at all possible, to allow the children to think that you and your ex are still friendly. Thanks for watching.